Have you ever been hit with the feeling where time just stops while make the most difficult decision of your life? I have. It was the most pressurizing, stressful, and scariest decision I ever made, but I somehow managed the right choice. It was a very narrow escape. First things first, I'm a prison security officer working at a very dark but highly facilitated prison in Detroit. I'd say half of hell's spawn dwells here. The worst criminals you could ever imagine all decided to converge into one place. That place just so happens to be here. Let me tell you, this place is the most fucked up grim hole you could ever imagine. Think of a place with barely any rules, inhabited by unruly citizens. This is it, and turns you into a person you thought you'd never be. Your mind becomes easily desensitized and corrupt over the course of at least a month or so. The least cringeworthy crime somebody has ever committed here was probably aggravated assault on multiple occasions. Other times, the guards would try to find somebody who had the lightest charge or charges on them when we got bored, if there were no child molesters to beat the shit out of for fun. Prison fights were a daily basis. Riots used to be a monthly ritual. Many of us used to wonder how the hell we survived this long before we upgraded. We became so uptight. We are authorized to fire upon anyone who causes misconduct and try to keep to keep things in order before we have to fire a shot. It really messes with your head and makes you forget the proper ethics and reason. I've seen guards shoot prisoners just because they didn't like them. The cells get darker and colder the deeper you get into the facility. Some of them make you wonder if they're even supposed to be a whole cell. We sometimes traveled there since the prison fills up pretty quickly with older ones take leave. The deepest hall had an ambience of dreadful darkness. The occasional rat squeal could be heard. The stereotypical moisture dripping sounds were present. You can sometimes hear the prisoners screaming and pitching a fit while losing their sanity. Just the feeling of the hall gave you the creeps. It was cold and able to send chills down your body no matter how many times you've been down there. There was, however, one strange room that we noticed at the end of one of the halls. It was found in the depths of the cell block. It seemed to have an old steel bar for a handle. It had 4 strange-looking locks. There was a very faded square of what used to be a sign. I never knew what it once said, neither did the other guards. The only letters I could make out on it were O-O-R at the bottom right corner. Nobody that we knew would ever been in those doors except for very highest ranking officers. Some of us had questioned the door, and we were all told the same thing. That's classified. Rumor leaked that dead bodies were made into a tomb was settled there, but it wasn't subtle enough for most of us to believe it. We all just knew something wasn't right about that room. Today, a major prison riot broke out. Who knows what started it? It all seemed so planned out, so cleverly timed. 3 guards were killed instantly, with a giant mob of orange suits attacking everyone in sight. Some had small, almost useless weapons, which escalated to bigger and much more dangerous weapons. The guards' batons were taken out, and used to bash the doors and their heads. A few of them somehow salvaged some firearms and using them against us. The guards in the more popular rooms had no chance. There were many groups wandering around, either trying to let out other prisoners or find the emergency gun cache. It was hidden very well in the facility, but I didn't want to go undiscovered for long. It could eventually be found, especially with the determination of the prisoners. I ran into one of the top secret rooms, which was open but deserted. I reached into an open drawer, hidden under a desk in the corner of the room. There was a key. It wasn't like any key I've ever seen. It was shaped like a skeleton key, except the studs were shaped in strange thunderbolt-like patterns. There was a note next to it that said, "Warning. Authorized use only for this key. Lethal force will be used." I somehow instantly knew what it was for, so I ran towards the depths of the jail, dodging incoming prisoner blows. I managed to throw a deadly nose break to one of them and slammed another. I don't remember how I got there. I must have blacked out from the fights. As I stood at the end of the long cell hall, I felt a strange, suspenseful dread course throughout my body. The closer I neared the door entitled OOR, the more nervous I felt. I quivered, probably from the coldness of the cell and the slight fear that was bothering me. The dripping moisture must have been the loudest sound I have ever heard at the time. I felt lightheaded, wondering what I was about to experience. However, I did not have much time. Whether I was going to hide in the room or bunker for safety, I needed to get in, so I placed the key into the locks. It required effort to awkwardly twist the key. Each one had a loud breaking sound when they were unlocked. I paused. I felt very uncomfortable. I knew it had to be done. I grabbed the metal handle and pulled. It didn't budge. It required a lot more effort to be opened. It scraped against the ground and slowly creaked its way open. Steel grinding against the tough floor, it produced an eerie echoing creaking sound. I went inside and closed the door until it was only a crack. It was dark, pitch dark, even though I could barely see the crack of the door. All I saw was black. The room seemed to be spacey enough to spread out your arms without touching the walls. I felt for a switch, lever, something, anything, to produce even just the smallest bit of light. I felt this string that seemed attached to something above me. I pulled on it. An old-fashioned metal hanging light shone from above. There in front of me was a steel cylinder. It was not only locked with a safe wheel and 4 other strange-looking locks, but it was bolted shut. It was never meant to be opened. Then, the answer to all my curiosity to what was in this room came upon me when I saw the metal peephole. It was locked closed and placed about 3 feet above my head, and I am 6'1". The cylinder towered over me. The height only reached half of that of the cylinder. I found a key laying out on the steel drawer nearby, and I didn't know what to do to the dark display. I have been fantasizing about it for the longest time. I placed the key into the peephole lock to see if it would work. To my surprise, it fit perfectly. I took off the lock and took a deep breath. This is it. No turning back. I slowly slid the peephole open. I felt like I couldn't move any part of my body besides my hand. Immediately, I saw 2 dim, scarred eyelids inside. Both eyes were not only scarred, but had a clear, previously cut gash down the middle. I froze for a second. But then after a bit, I said, "Hello?" The eyes opened swiftly without warning. Those eyes were unlike anything I've ever seen. One was discolored and white, as if it were a blind eye. The other was red, blood red. He responded with a very deep voice that came from his belly. "Yes," said a very deep, booming, raspy voice, full of despair and hate, the air filled with the sound of his speech. "Hello," I stuttered. I was too scared to even move. Not only the eyes were scarring to look at, but the feeling of dread was upon me. "You wake me for what reason?" He sounded quite angry. I honestly don't know. The prisoners, they all just revolted. They overpowered us. This is the only place I could go. The inevitable deaths have come upon you. You only have one choice." The power and creepy feeling of his voice was enough to make you tremble in fear. No amounts of steel could protect you from this type of fear. "Who are you?" 959 was all he said. "Why did you keep you locked up in this chamber, if I must ask?" "Behind you." At this point, I was shocked and scared shitless. I was certain that there was actually something behind me, ready to kill me with their bare hands. I turned, and there was a metal cabinet nearby. I walked over to it, noticing that my feet were shaking, and opened it. Inside there were many files. "Open," said Prisoner 959. The bellow of his voice startled me. I opened up one file named Crime Scene Photos. Instantly, I knew. Instantly, I was disgusted and grew sick to my stomach. One of the pages read, 12 victims in squatter home cellar. Next to it was a picture of bloodied and pale bodies impaled through the mouth and out the coccyx. They were upside down, stripped, bloodied, and bearing almost no layers of skin. Their mouths were stretched wide open and their jaws unhinged so the poles which impaled them could fit. Some of them had absolutely no teeth, but bloody gums squeezing on the poles. Their eyes were rolled back into their head, and some of them were facing directly at the camera. The bloodshot whites of their eyes displayed the pain and agony they must have gone through. Behind them, there was a message, written in blood on the cellar concrete wall, reading, "Penance." I had never seen such a revolting picture in my life. You did this?" I trembled. They deserved it," quietly replied the prisoner. I looked deeper, and it showed a picture from the prison. There was so much gore in the cells. I remember overhearing about the incident from the prisoners, but didn't know if it was actually true. There lay two of what seemed like dead inmates on the ground, and one was nailed to the wall with a long metal piece from the bed. They were so terribly mangled that they couldn't even have recognized as human. Oh my God. This actually happened? It's true? "Yes," quietly said the voice. I looked at other files, attempting to look for information on the sick fuck. I read this real name was unknown, but his infamous alias seems to be Karn. His guest age was about 30. He was massive, hulking, 7 feet tall, weighing around 304 pounds. I couldn't believe it. Taking on someone of this magnitude was impossible without enough firepower. His early life is completely unknown. He has 103 claimed murders, although he potentially has claimed 170. Skipping along his biography, he apparently has killed many known criminals. He had killed 2 cops. He was caught in the act of flaying a fully conscious man alive after people heard the overwhelming screams from nearby. And it took 6 tasers to take him down. He survived 2 gunshot shells to the side of the stomach. All the victims and crimes were kept confidential to keep the public from fearing the streets. Now I can see why this man, or thing, is kept a secret room with a very secure chamber. Why? Why did you do this? I yelled in disbelief. They deserved to die. They deserved to suffer. They deserved to rot, he said. Why did they deserve to die? I was on the verge of insanity from what I had seen. They inflicted pain on others. They must suffer. Penance. I had to think fast. The prisoners were closing in fast. There was no chance of me holding back for long. There were still rioting prisoners here. My gun will protect me against all of them. My hand-to-hand skills are good, but I can't go on forever. I have myself cornered. Here and there, I can barely faintly hear the gunshot fire outside. The last possible choice I could have is to release the prisoner. I can only hope he killed those who deserved it, though not in the methods that he did it. If he would help me, it could be my only chance to get out of here alive. If I help you out of here, will you help me? No. I will help the ones who could be victimized by these heaps of meat. Does that include me? I was praying for a miracle at this point. Yes. I quickly grabbed a strange-looking tool from the cabinet. It seemed like it would take out the bolts from the door. I took out the bolts. They clanged to the floor. I carefully unlocked the locks, one by one, very slowly but carefully, hearing nothing but the sound of the key jingling the pins. Then came the final step. The safe wheel. It looked very threatening and uninviting, but I had no choice. I turned it multiple times using all my might, thinking it would never open. Suddenly, a very loud piercing clang noise echoed throughout the room. It scared me and made me fall back. I watched as the door slowly opened, pounding, producing a loud creaking. Inside, there the prisoner stood. Just as his file described, he was a giant, wearing ragged old orange clothing, greased up to the point where it was almost gray. He was a mess. His face was terribly scarred. Not a single patch of his skin on the face was smooth. His malicious eyes stared back at me, one of them white, the other red. They stared at me from behind the mask, which covered his nose and mouth. It had straps that wrapped around the back of his head. He seemed to have parts that went into his mouth. Instantly, I kind of referenced it to Hannibal Lecter. The mask was probably to keep him from biting. His scars left you speechless with fear. He had very long black hair which lengthened down to his waist. There were chains around his limbs. The inside of the steel door had a couple dents that were well made for a human being. I thought to myself, how could I unchain him without freaking the hell out? But just then, he fucking broke the chains right out of the chamber. Just like that, a human being ripping the chains out of the chamber with ease. He stepped out of the chamber, his boots producing a loud thump that I could feel on the ground. He towered over my head. He came up to me, staring in both eyes, into my soul and past it. He was extremely enraged. I felt so frightened I couldn't move. I was shivering throughout my whole body. I wouldn't dare budge or twitch. He put his hands forward. I thought he was going to wring my neck, but he didn't. He was showing me his handcuffs so I could unlock them. I did so, then slowly stepped aside, out of the way. He just kept staring at me with the look as if he wanted nothing more than to gouge my eyes out. But he slowly turned and went on his way. He opened the door with almost no effort and thumped down the cell hall. I watched him as he made his way down. All of a sudden, two prisoners arrived around the corner and darted down the cell block. That provided the biggest and last mistake of their lives. Immediately they saw Karn and just froze. But worse than I ever did. They must have known about the incident in the cell. They were too shocked to budge. Their eyes widened. Unexpectedly, the giant drew back his hand and backhanded his fist into the side of the prisoner's head. His head smacked into the door of one of the whole cells and drew blood all over his face. 959 grabbed the second prisoner's face and smashed the back of his head against the other side of the wall. Instantly, brain matter, blood, and pieces of skull blotched everywhere, making a gory mess on the wall and floor. I was speechless. I couldn't say or do anything from this point. 959 killed two men with very little effort. By the time I collected myself and regained what was left of my sanity, a few minutes later, I started down the hall, towards the direction that 959 went. It wasn't long before a commotion of the prisoners went from angry riots to blood-curdling screams, cries for help, pleas for mercy, and groans of agony. I saw the remains of prisoners scattered all around. As the halls and rooms grew smaller, all I could see were bloody fragments covering orange clothing. Some were impaled on bars in the same fashion as before, which were made from ripped-off steel cell door. Gunshots fired, but seemed to do nothing about the screams. I ran towards the path of dismembered limbs and corpses. Not a single life was spared. No quarter, no warning, no mercy. Every prisoner was grotesquely murdered in cold blood. One of them was hung up over a railing by an orange pair of pants. The only bodies that weren't mangled as badly as the orange suits were the guards. Most of their corpses were intact. The ones that were still alive were scared shitless. Maybe they were saved. When I caught up to 959, I could see him stomping on a prisoner's head, squashing it like a grape. He was pulling a prisoner off a guard by his neck. He picked him up and slammed him against the wall and squeezed until his neck made a loud cracking sound. He was killed instantly. Another inmate attempted to rush at 959 with the butt of the shotgun. He rammed it onto his back, but it barely even budged him. In response, prisoner 959 turned around and grabbed the gun. The inmate tried to punch him in the face, but it blocked it with his right hand. Grabbing it, it struck the elbow of his left hand, dislocating it. The inmate screamed in pain. 959 then proceeded to bludge him into a shattered boneless pulp with the shotgun until it broke apart. He then shoved the barrel into the inmate's abdomen. A hiding prisoner attempted to grab me from behind. I turned, elbowing him in the head twice, then bent over and grabbed his right leg. I rolled forward and pulled back as hard as I could, dislocating his limb. No chance of him getting up. However, Karn didn't think the same thing. He grabbed the prisoner's intact left leg, straightened it, and crunched into his body. The prisoner screamed in pain and agony from the shock. 959 walked on like it never happened. Many of the other guards were able to get get as situated as we could once the SWAT arrived. However, once they made it, 959 was gone. Prisoner 959 has never been heard of since. He had disappeared without a trace. He left no signs of leave after the bloodbath of the jail. Investigators and authorities have searched up and down the city, inside and out. Eyes were kept open for more gruesome reports. They found nothing. I can honestly see why they have sought him tirelessly. He could be anywhere, doing anything, to anybody.